How are you?
I'm very, very good.
Now, Joel Edgerton, I'm going to ask that question again, and I expect a better answer. Given that you have done a great job with this movie, and it's doing extremely well in the United States. Cost you about 5-6 million to make?
4.7.
And it's so far taken in America alone?
I think about 19 million at the moment, and they reckon maybe by the end of the weekend about 24.
It's actually around the 24 mark now as we speak.
Is it?
According to Box Office Mojo. So I'm asking that question again, Joel Edgerton. How are you feeling given all that?
Oh, excellent. Oh, look, I have to say, I was having this chat with my dad, who's notorious for not expressing his excitement in a punch the air, throw a party for yourself kind of way, but definitely in the sort of thin margin of excitement that I express, I'm right at the top end of it, because I've had a beautiful week. The film's done very well. I feel like very satisfied with the result of it before even the box office stuff came out. People have been very nice about their responses to it. And my brother just had a baby, and life is good on all sorts of levels.
In 25 words or less, because I know you've done this a million times already, describe the outline of the story of The Gift.
Well, a couple moving to a town the husband grew up in, shopping. The husband gets a tap on the shoulder basically from a character who he went to high school with, and that, as it turns out, he may not have been so nice to. And the space opens up for a potential resolution or something much darker.
You deal with the issue of bullying in this film. Not bullying as it happens, but bullying many, many years later. Why did you tap into that very, very topical theme?
It's such a, sadly, someone says, oh, it's such a part of the zeitgeist. Like, sadly, it's always part of the zeitgeist, and it will always be part of the zeitgeist. We're cruel people. Human beings are cruel to each other. We're cruel at school. The film also deals with how we bully each other within relationships and in our workplace. That those aspects of one human dominating another will always exist, no matter what age we are. And I was very interested in whether people change and those roles we play in high school, how do we evolve? And I believe that part of that evolution requires a person's ability to look back and acknowledge the past. And in order to acknowledge the past, you can create a better future. Jason Bateman's character in our movie is someone who believes that you do not look back, you keep motoring forward, and apology is a sign of weakness. And that's going to be his potential demise.
As succinctly as you can, explain the concepts of misdirection and negative space.
Of misdirection and negative space. Well, in terms of like story terms for me, I wanted to kind of, cheekily use the great movies of the 90s that set the tone for this kind of triangle thriller. Have the audience and hold their hand, walk them down that path, and then just throw away the roadmap, because that's what suspense is about, I think, is like nothing should be what it seems. So therefore, the story as we know it, if we're familiar with it, should get thrown out the window. And I was very interested in that. It's like, what do we expect? Give us the opposite.
Did you sit down and schematically design the structure of this film so that when you came to a point that you knew the audience were expecting a certain thing, you said, okay, we're going to go off in this other direction?
Yeah, and the real moment where I realised that was the way I needed to go and was potentially going to be the success of the movie was taking all the tropes and looking at them. And the main one, for example, is, in all these movies, the person, the thing you most worry for is the family pet. And we do something with that familiar trope. And yet I thought, well, and what we ultimately do with that is designed to then take all the handholds away from the audience. Because when we do what we do, they are hopefully left there going, okay, I don't know where I am right now, because this is not what I expect.
Just quickly, negative space, which you use in this film, that part of the frame where it's empty, nothing's happening, and that builds up the suspense that something's going to happen in this space.
Yeah, we wanted to, one of the things that I particularly was interested in was pressing in on negative space and pressing in on sort of, you know, domestic space, you know, and I kept using the word domesticity on set. It's like, even when big arguments are happening, I want dishes to be being washed and plates being cleared, and just to bring it into that space where we go, I've been in that argument, I've been in that house, I know what this feels like to be these people. But like, finding a front door and just pushing in on it, because there's a presence that's coming to this house and there's a presence that's receding from it. It could be Gordo, my character, it could be just the feeling of malevolence, but creating that anticipation along with the elements of sound and music became a very big key to us. You know, in my own sort of, you know, feeling of how to put a touch of Kubrick into the movie in a way. And I say that cringingly because, you know, I'm not professing to do anything wild like that, but definitely people like him, Michael Haneke, who creates such great tension with simplicity, became really important people for me to reference and watch leading up to making the movie.
Given that the film relies so much on subtle tonal shifts and changing perspectives, what was the experience like directing this, given that it's your first film? Were you using storyboards? Did you plan this thing right to the nth degree before you started shooting?
I did a little bit of sort of shooting animatics, video storyboards, just for certain scenes. More the action stuff, nights where I knew I was going to have more than 5 actors, you know, and a bit of action. I did a lot of storyboarding. I would sit with my DP, Edu Grau, who I particularly loved for this movie because I thought his formality and style in A Single Man, which he shot for Tom Ford, and that he'd shot in a mid-century modern house, really suited what I wanted to do. You know, things on dollies and tracks, and you know, so I would sit with him every Sunday and talk every shot of the week as a plan. Now, we would deviate from that plan according to what happened on the day, but we had a real set plan, and it was important for me to feel like I had that plan up in my back pocket, given that it was my first, you know, sitting in the directing chair venture, and because I was nervous, I was definitely fearful of getting to that place, and had probably like delayed the process for a couple of years because of that fear. Now I'm so happy that I've done it. Very happy.
This is not intended as a criticism, but is this an Americanized film?
To me, it was something that I always wrote as an American movie because one of the first inspirations was the yearbook, which we don't really have as a big a deal in Australia, but you know, the yearbook, photographs of people and comments made, most likely to succeed was like, you know, one of the first things that I remember writing in my notebook when I was like, you know, Simon was the guy most likely to succeed. The idea of being class president, all these very American things. At some point, you know, because of pure economics, you know, and looking to maybe shoot the movie with a rebate in Australia, I was starting to go down that road of going, you know, it's a universal story. I mean, it could be set anywhere in the world because we all go to school. We all have those roles of bully, no matter what country you go to. So I was open-minded to that. It just so happened that the people that opened their checkbooks were, you know, Blumhouse and STX, and they were like, we want to shoot the movie in LA. And I was like, well, okay, well, that's fine with me.
As well as this being a very good film, one hopes that, and this is a side issue, but that it hopefully is going to help get rid of the cultural cringe that still remains in this industry. That there would still be people who would say, as a criticism, oh, he's Americanized it, he's catered for the American audience.
Yeah. Surely
with that point now, Joel, 2015, we should just need to let that go.
Yeah, look, you know, who knows? If anyone wants to criticise the fact that I made my first movie in America, then, you know, they can bully me if they want. I made a movie called Felony here last year, which I was really proud of, and I have to say I was a little bit disappointed that, you know, it didn't get seen by as many people as we would have loved. It's an excellent movie. I think Matthew Saville did a great massively great job of that. And part of that for me was a stepping stone to make my next movie. I had a couple of projects, one of which I was looking of doing here. It wasn't easy for me to get that thing going. The Gift happened to be the thing that happened. But I'd love to make something. One of the things I'm toying with is trying to make a movie back in Sydney at Fox Studios, something that I'm interested in building sets for, so that I can come home and make a movie at home. But I definitely think it's an interesting point, being that, one of the luxuries I do have of making this film is the weight of a good amount of spending on P&A. And without getting in too much in the business angle of things, it is important that if you make a movie and you want it to be seen with people, it's a product that you have to sell. Now, they could sell it by spending more money, the Americans. It's sad in a way that we don't really have a culture in the movie making where we make great movies and we have such excellent people in front and behind the camera. But we don't spend enough money to sell them. And it's fine if the Americans weren't spending much either. But when you compare an Australian poster, sitting next to a massive cutout thing of an American movie, it creates a psychology for the audience where they go, well, I've got $20, should I spend it on this little thing or this big thing? The razzmatazz or the little, fizz-up. And it's not a fizz, because it's a great Australian movie, but the perception is that it's not as big and important or special as the other thing. And I think that's sad.
What you learned from The Square and from Felony, two fantastic films that deserve bigger audiences, that came and went, I think, because most people did not know anything about them.
Yeah, and that's constantly being reflected to me by journalists in America that I speak to about The Gift. They're like, The Square was one of my favourite movies of 2008 or 2009, and real great words about Felony. I think what I did learn in one aspect is, I am not the greatest person at marketing a movie, and actually one of the great lessons I learned about being a director, someone had once said to me, just hire the greatest people you can get for each job and get out of their way. Because why should I tell Edith Grau how to frame a shot? Because he's going to do it, 100 times better than I could. Now, I can offer my opinion, and I think that goes for marketing of movies as well. And I actually think that whatever you think about American movies, and that's a whole other debate about prequel, sequel, franchise stuff, because that's easier on the marketing front. But the American marketing teams, they put a lot of time and energy into and thought into how to market their movies.
The one question I do have to ask you, out of fairness to you, because we've ripped it apart so many times and we'll continue to rip apart Exodus.
Oh, right.
Okay. I just wanted to know, make us feel better about what we say about that film and how terrible it was. What positive thing did you take away from it?
Did you find it terrible?
I didn't like it for this reason. Yeah. It's a biblical epic that tries to discount God. And it's a hard sell. I know the film made about $250 million.
Yeah.
But just as an epic, I just thought it was kind of, come on, all this money. Mention God, it's okay.
Well, they do. I mean, they do mention God, and Malik is a sort of a spokesperson for God.
I guess, what positive things did you take away from that experience, working on such a big production, working with Ridley Scott?
Oh, look, I was just in love with Ridley from start to finish, and it never ended, and I still am. And I think that, I learned a lot about sort of trying to fit that massive space. I'd had a touch of it with Gatsby, because big movie making it's a big situation that requires a lot of careful thought, and actors have to look after themselves to a certain degree. It's like, how do you fit your performance into this massive machine? Look, I learned a lot from that experience, and I think that I had a lot of relish in playing the character I was playing. I also learned a lot about the controversy that ensued, about which I think is a great future conversation to have about the way Hollywood casts movies. Funnily enough, I read an interesting. Someone sent me an article just as a silly, curious thing, that Rachel Dolezal, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, had sort of slammed that issue back in the day, and then it was ironic that what happened with her was like, well... but anyway, the movie taught me a lot, and but with every experience that I've ever had in my life, I would never exchange it for anything. I just hope I get to work with Ridley again.
What do you think of 70s cinema?
70s cinema is amazing. I mean, there's a few little nods in the movie to The Shining, and there's another couple to Rosemary's Baby,
And to Cape Fear.
Yeah.
Is he coming in the house or not?
And to Apocalypse Now. So, I discovered that when I was at university, and it suddenly taught me so much about what I wanted to do for the rest of my life,
This is an American-Australian co-production, fair to say?
Yeah, well, my producer, Rebecca Yeldon, is Australian. Luke Doolan, my editor, he cut Animal Kingdom and The Square. So I had a lot of Australians working with me, and it's definitely a blue tongue production. But yeah, most of the money came out of America, and everybody's talking with American accents and all that. I had an incredible marketing team on this, and what they would do, because of The Gift, the whole book of The Gift, for launching the trailer, they found 50 journalists who had the biggest internet footprint. They researched their Instagram, Facebook pages, and found secrets about them from 2-3 years ago, and bought them gifts that were tailor-made to stuff that they knew personally about them. And these journalists would get the gift and they'd be like, how did they know that I was into this? Or a collar for their cat or something, and they were creeped out by it, which was the creepiness of my character in the movie.